Okay, guys. So as I always say in the beginning of these things, I have no idea how to start these. So we usually start them with me saying that I can't start them. So we're started now basically. And today I have a very special guest for you guys. I'm talking to LeadTimeNull, which is it's not his real name. but we'll keep it with that. Hi, Lead. I'm gonna call you Lead.
And how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing very fine. You and I know each other from high school. Is it called that? College.
You went to high school together?
I don't know. In Denmark, we don't really have that system, so it's. I'm always like, what the fuck do we call it? Gymnasium. That's not. That sounds like a Pokemon thing, right? So,
yeah, we go way back. It's like half a life ago. We met each other.
Yeah, we fell in love. No, but I really want to get you on here because I'm doing this podcast thing. It's kind of right now it's still in an experimental phase. But I basically just want to talk to interesting people about interesting things, not limit myself to anything, but just like whatever I feel is interesting right now. And right now I'm very much into cryptocurrencies and especially Cardano. And you are as well and have been for some time. Maybe we should just start there with you giving a short presentation of who you are and what you're working on at the moment in the Cardano community.
Yeah, absolutely. So so my day job, I'm a software engineer, and I got into crypto early 2020 when I read the news about the American Fed reducing the leverage interest rates down to 0 for all the private banks. And I thought, oh boy, now it's inevitable. It's just a matter of time before they run it into the ground. Maybe this is the time where I need to actually learn about crypto and hedge my bets a little bit. So started reading up on crypto, understanding blockchain, how does it all work. I could see that there were already at that time, there was like 5,000 different registered cryptocurrencies. That seemed a little bit daunting. And I knew there's no chance that I'm going to be able to stay on top of which ones of these are worthwhile without it becoming like a second job. So I started building like an automation trading index where I just figured if I'm just invested always in whatever's on the top 30, and it automatically makes sure that if something goes down, it will sell that and buy the new one that's gone up, then I wouldn't maximize my profits, but as long as crypto as a whole would be going up, then I wouldn't be losing money that way. So it was like a bet on crypto, not a bet on specific coins. But as most people in the space experience, as soon as you got your money in something, you start paying a bit more attention to it, and you start reading more articles, you start watching some movies, some YouTube videos and interviews, and started learning about these different specific projects. If nothing else, then at least it started with the blue chips. So learning about, so what is Ethereum? How is that set apart from Bitcoin? What is Ripple, and why are they such a big thing? Because they were number 3 at the time on the market cap. And after a while, I got to Cardano, and I had to do a double take on it because this wasn't like any of the other ones. And they seem to have much bigger aspirations, much longer term vision than what any of the other projects were putting forward, which is something that I personally find appealing. But at the same time, the conversation about it, if you looked in common fields, if you looked in social media communities, was very vitriolic. there was a lot of utterance about Cardano from people that despised it, that really did not like it. It was being called a scam, it was being called a cult, it was being called any name in the book you could think of that would be derogatory in crypto. So I figured, well, I kind of like the vision, the things that they're talking about, but all these people are up in arms about it. So it must be that one of two things is happening here. Either it is that these very angry people are right, and they're trying to help me escape the siren song and raise the flag, saying this is a scam and you really shouldn't be engaging with it. And if that's the case, I want to know so I can make sure so I don't put any of my money into this atrocity. Or it could mean that Cardano is not just onto something, but that what they're working on is so disruptive that even the people that are in the cryptocurrency space fail to see the forest for the trees. And so when they have to make up their own mind as for why are you not invested in Cardano, cognitive dissonance would then dictate that they would have to reject it because, well, if they cannot explain why this thing technically is the scam, is the cult, is all the bad things that they're naming it as, then it's a normal psychological thing to do to then just reject the very notion of the idea. I had a suspicion that the latter was the case because most of the things that were being thrown at it was very ad hominem. There wasn't really a lot of substance in any of it. But if the latter was the case, then I also really want to know, because if that's the case, then this might be an opportunity to be early in on what would be the next generation of blockchain. So as luck would have it, I had just been hospitalized a few weeks earlier, so I had lots of time on my hands. So I dove in full time, just living, breathing, everything crypto, everything Cardano, trying to understand what Cardano was doing. But in order to really understand that, I also had to understand in depth of what exactly is blockchain. How does Bitcoin work? How does Ethereum work? Why is Cardano a different thing? Why is Cardano doing something different than Polkadot is doing? Why are they doing something different than what Avalanche is doing? And by the end of it all, like nearly 2 months after I had started, I'd gone from having a perfectly diversified automated portfolio to being like 97% in ADA, and then like tiny bit of Bitcoin, and then the rest is just casino stuff, just gambling on fun things. And so fast forwarding to today, everything that's happened since then, I'm running a stake pool operation now in Cardano. Take a Nani, delegate to me or I will find you. And I am working with the Cardano governance bootstrap project called Project Catalyst, where I'm the lead author of a funded proposal called The Great Filter that aims to help improve the whole governance system for the engaged voters, and working on NFT projects, making luxury jewelry on the blockchain, using NFTs as proofs of authenticity, ownership, and provenance. And in short, I've ended up what I feared, and having like this, now I do have a second job, all the things that's happening here, but I just love it so goddamn much. All the potential and the community of Cardano. I know you're new in it, but I think you might have already gotten the impression yourself that they're so welcoming, they're so helpful, and they really do seem to live and breathe the ethos and the pathos of Cardano itself. So well, that's the A to C of the coffee cup.
That was great, of the coffee cup. We need to get that. I'll edit that in somewhere here over your face, probably just doing the entire thing.
That's cool.
But we'll get into some of the projects that you're working on more specifically, I'm thinking. But that was a nice little introduction of how you got into it. It's wild how it seems like you cannot you cannot give crypto a little finger. It's like if you dabble in it a little bit, you're just sucked in. It's such a powerful suck. It's really such a pull because it's so disruptive and it's so interesting what is happening in that space, and I feel exactly the same. It's a little funny story here that I also mentioned on Twitter the other day, that you actually wrote to me back in August 2020 and was like, hey, I found this project, it's called Cardano, I think you should take a look at it. I expect it to like 5x or whatever in the coming months, something like along the lines of that, you wrote to me. And I was just like, what the fuck? Like, what is this? I had never, at that point, I had never read anything, basically. I had read something about blockchain some years earlier for an article for my own like website. But at that point, I just viewed the whole crypto space as just, it's gamblers and scammers, and that's it. And I knew blockchain was interesting, but I didn't know how it all like connected. I didn't even know like how like really what blockchain was. I don't think I really understood that at that point. And so you wrote me, and I was like, damn, that's such a shame, because I really liked you, and now you're trying to peddle me this fucking scam shit. And yeah, fast forward some months, it fucking explodes, and I would have made a lot of money had I listened to you. And I was like, I felt really dumb. So I started looking into things, and then I got sucked into it, and now we sit here. And my biggest portfolio position is Cardano, though it's not 97%. I want to say it's more something like, I think it's 35% data. But I think
how did you see Cardano then? Like, what made you notice it when it blew up? Because you said you weren't in crypto.
Yeah, I just went back and looked, because it kind of, it affected me that you said that. It really did. And I was like trying to, I was like doubting myself whether like, am I just being extremely paranoid, or like what is going on here? I just think that I've never experienced anyone texting me out of the blue and being like, hey, I think that if you put some money into this, it's gonna 5x in the next couple of months. That has never happened to me before. And I was just like, this is a scam. This is something. This is a pyramid scheme. It's something like he invested in it, and now he wants me to buy something, and I don't like it. And yeah, so I went back and checked later. I was like, I need to see what is this? And then I saw that the price had gone up a lot since you wrote me. And so I got interested. I was like, okay, maybe it wasn't a scam. And so, yeah, so my journey started. And actually at that point, I think I just recognized that, okay, it wasn't a scam. And I didn't really read that much into it before, like some months later. And then you hosted a party, and then it all just took off from there, basically. Yeah, so, and now we're here. So it's really exciting times. And I want to talk about some of these projects that you're in, but I'm afraid that it's going to be, if we don't first try to explain to the listeners what Cardano is in like a more broader sense, and like, for example, Project Catalyst, what is that? How does that work?
I was about to suggest that since I know that you're fairly new in crypto, and your audience would likely be as well, let's just start talking about what is crypto, what is blockchain, what is it that it's solving, and why is that madmen like myself thinks that like this is unequivocally the future. We don't know the details, but it is going in one direction.
Yeah, great idea. So give me your perspective on the whole crypto space. Start.
So trying to give as low resolution, high overview of it as possible, because the technical details of it, people can look this up on their own and figure all of those out. But at its core, So Bitcoin, as I would bet everybody knows, was the first one to come out. And what Bitcoin did was that Bitcoin solved the Byzantine generals problem, which is a philosophical thought experiment issue where you have two generals that needs to siege the same castle from two different directions. So they need to send messengers to each other to coordinate the attack, but doing so, they don't know if the messenger is going to be captured along the way and if it's going to be the enemy that's actually relaying false information, or they don't know if they get the information in time, but then the other one gets assaulted. And it's a very old philosophical puzzle in it. In layman's terms, what it really just means for that was so revolutionary is that it removed the need for trust from the equation of a financial transaction. And that might seem not that amazing at first, or not that impactful, but when you really start thinking about what that means, the possibility starts to unravel in infinite ways. So the way that it achieves the removal of trust is with the peer-to-peer system, where everybody is the bank, and the only trust that you do need to have is that you trust that the majority of the network is an agreement about what the truth is. And of course, the bigger the network becomes, the harder it will be to coordinate false information, which increases your security that you can safely assume that what the network is saying is true. So Bitcoin was the first to do this, and that in itself was revolutionary. The same way that like the first mobile phones we had was revolutionary. They're extremely inconvenient, they're insanely expensive. Very few people really had them and used them for all these reasons. But it was a revolutionary change of the technology. Now you could bring your communications with you. It changed the paradigms of what you could be doing. And in some certain jobs, in some certain situations, this could have a humongous impact on it. For most normal people, when it first came out, it meant nothing. Most people couldn't afford it. Most people already had lives, rhythms, and systems put in place that did the things that they needed it to, and a mobile phone. They couldn't really see how it all fit in there. So I would compare Bitcoin to the revolution of the mobile telephone. So later, as we know, of course, this technology got improved. It went from being a gigantic, 4-kilo brick to becoming something that you could actually fit in your pocket, something that had like a battery lifetime that made it actually usable. And now it became like a device that were more obviously providing you valuable utility. I think a good benchmark for that would be your Nokia 3310s, and like around that time where the leap between that, it came from the new technology was revolutionary, but in itself, it had a lot of caveats and a lot of shortage and a bit of a niche application in it. Then it got pristine, it got polished down to something more useful. And of course, now the era that we're living in now in mobile technology is that it's not really a phone as much as it is a powerful computer that everybody has in our pocket. And today, hardly anybody uses it to actually make telephone calls or texts with over telephone networks. We're using the internet to have voice calls or instant messages through applications, or using our various applications to do just about anything that we want to do on this telephone. So if you take a step back and you look at the first revolution of now we have a mobile telephone, nobody would ever imagine that it is going to end up becoming this supercomputer relative to their time, at least, that everybody and their 8-year-old kids are going to have in their pockets. And you can run your entire career from this little phone in many jobs today. You wouldn't actually need anything other than that. This little thing does absolutely everything for you. that is where blockchain is headed. Personally, I don't think Bitcoin is moving there with it because it's stuck in its ways. It only does the one thing that it does. Does it very well, very, very securely because it is so popular. So the network is so really big and huge. So people refer to it as digital gold, which I think is an apt analogy as well, because gold is also a thing that most people agree this has value. It's also something that's extremely inconvenient to store or move around or pay with. And all of those things pair very well with Bitcoin. So I don't think that anybody buying Bitcoin, not financial advice, I'm a coffee cup. I don't think anybody buying Bitcoin today is going to lose money, but I'm not really interested in Bitcoin because Bitcoin is the mobile telephone. Mm-hmm. I don't see the mobile telephone being the future. I'm looking at the smartphones. So Ethereum was the next thing, of course, with the smart contracts. And Ethereum was basically the rebellion of the people who are trying to be engaged with the Bitcoin community and say, look, we can make these smart contracts and here's how we can do it with Bitcoin and make that work. But because Bitcoin community is very conservative and protective of its protocol, which makes a lot of sense, these people found it very difficult, impossible to get a majority to agree on making these changes. So they said, fine, we'll make our own blockchain with blackjack and CryptoKitties. And so Vitalik Buterin, Charles Hoskinson, and a bunch of these OG Ethereum founders set out to build Ethereum. So it was being built from the very beginning as being this prototype proof of concept. Like, look, we told you we could do this thing. It wasn't designed to do anything other than that, literally. And that has brought with it amazing innovations. And Ethereum's community now has everything under the sun of cool, amazing developments that's happening on it. But because it was not actually designed to do anything really other than this proof of concept, it is proven quite predictably to scale absolutely horribly into facilitating this thing at scale. One of the ways that manifests itself most notably is how gas fees easily go up to hundreds and hundreds of dollars on a busy day for the network.
Gas fees are transaction fees, just for the...
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So that means that, like, doing anything on the network, if I want to send you $5, it might cost me $500, which makes absolutely no sense, of course. And that's just like for a transaction, let alone for decentralized applications, smart contracts and programs that's on it. Depending on what the program is, it might need to make a lot of transactions to communicate its information, but you practically can't do that on Ethereum because it would cost such an obscene amount of money that like wouldn't make any sense. Like, try to imagine developing a decentralized Twitter on Ethereum. If you want to pay $500 every single time you want to send a tweet, that doesn't really work for most people in the world. Don't have that kind of money for their social media. So Cardano was founded by Charles Hoskinson, who was one of the original founders of Ethereum as well. That there was a lot of dispute amongst the leadership there, which they've all spoken about in great detail. It's always hard to know how much truth is in various statements and then the bias back and forth, but they all agreed that they disagreed about many things. And it seemed that the most prominent thing, at least as it is being presented, was that they were trying to figure out, should the founding and development of Ethereum be made to be for profit or non-profit? Charles Hoskinson infamously said that we should be making this thing for profit. We should be taking venture capital money and tying ourselves, our developers, to delivery specs, And the majority of the people in the Ethereum leadership say, no, we're going to make this for non-profit. We're going to do an initial coin offering where we take a portion of our pre-mined Ethereum coins, the Ether coins, and we're going to put them up for public auction, basically, so people can buy them. That's how they ended up doing it. The reason that Charles wanted to do it in the for-profit way, it might sound like it's the cigar-chewing evil capitalist approach, but it's actually kind of the inverse, because the whole notion of it is that, well, if you do an ICO, the initial coin offering, what you're doing is you're saying, it's like with a Kickstarter, give me all your money now up front, and I will in turn give you the promise that I'm going to deliver on all these things that we've told you. But you've given me all your money now, so you can just hope that I'm trustworthy. Where the for-profit approach, where you go out and you get your start seed money from a venture capital firm, well, you can rest assured venture capital invests in companies like this for a living. So you can rest assured that they're going to say, all right, let's figure out what the goals and the targets are. You're going to receive this much money, and we're going to expect for you to deliver this much, and then you'll get this much money, and then we'll expect for you to deliver this and this and this. And going that route would be holding the developers responsible for the delivery of it. It would keep the engineer that built the train, it would keep him on the train as it's ramming over the bridges, as opposed with the ICO model where you just get all the money up front, and all the investors can do is hope that you're gonna do the best you can, and you're gonna stick around even when things gets really tough, because things always get tough in anything you do. It doesn't matter if it's a lemonade stand, let alone a blockchain that's being developed in a completely new technology. And well, guess what happened? Well, all of these, not all, but most of the original founders and original developers on the team that got all these hundreds of millions of dollars from the ICOs, they up and left, not very long after, like months or maybe a year or two after, and started like their own things like Polkadot and all these other things. I don't know the details of all of that, but that makes sense as well, right? I mean, it's really hard to make anything in general, super hard to make something like this. And these are sharp, brilliant people. So if we're in a disagreement about, no, I think we should paint this green. And he's like, no, we should paint it red. And we both feel really, really strongly about that. Well, I got $50 million here. I'm going to go do my own thing. I'm going to paint that green. There's nothing that's keeping me here other than, well, me really just wanting to.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, that played out pretty horribly for Ethereum, I think. Well, in one sense, in one sense, everything's gone really, really awesome because Ethereum has become the bedrock for so much innovation of decentralized apps, layer 2 applications, and taking this further to show, look at all the things that we can do on the blockchain. But at the same time, it has driven face first into this predictable brick wall, which is the network doesn't scale any further. It wasn't built for what they want it to be now. It was built to be a shoebox proof of concept relative to the kind of things that it's trying to do now, which is why ETH 2.0 is even a thing. ETH 2.0 isn't really an upgrade. ETH 2.0 is building a completely new blockchain from the bottom up, and then doing so in a way where they can kind of launch the 1.0 on like an outdated appendage to kind of absorb in the activities that's going on with it today.
You're starting over.
Yeah, exactly. Which I hope all of that goes really well, but they're working with this. Yeah, they're working with this Silicon Valley approach, the whole move fast and break things, which is really great when you're working with innovation, with new stuff. And the problem is that blockchain is many different things, and it's trying to be many, many different things. And in some areas, you really do want to move fast, and you really and break things, figure out where the edges are, and fix all of that. In other areas, if you're looking at blockchain as an alternative financial structure, as in this is where you want to keep your wealth, your life savings, this is where you want insurance, you really don't want that to be a place that moves fast and breaks things. You want that to be a place that's built with a different level of care and caution. And so that's where Cardano comes in, where these first principles are something that Charles Hoskinson's held very dear, and then due to all these aforementioned differences in the Ethereum leadership, he decided to pick up his ball and leave, and took what money that he had from Ethereum that he hadn't gifted to his secretary. His secretary got like a ludicrous amount of money, at least what it became worth later, and then went to start Cardano. So he founded Input Output Hong Kong, and he made some part and helped start the Cardano Foundation, and brought in Umergo, and they started working on Cardano. And so Cardano was developed from first principles. The first principles approach is the one where you try to distill down your vision, your goals, to their lowest, smallest, most distilled definitions, and identify those as being your immovable truths. And so then everything that you're doing needs to be in service of these things. And if anything is in conflict of it, then that solution is wrong, and you discard it because you need something that fits in with the first principles. This is something that Elon Musk very famously also does in the way that he runs his companies, Tesla, SpaceX, Boring Company, etc. Cardano has the vision of delivering a truly worldwide financial infrastructure system that can not just reach even the developing countries where it can be difficult to get the physical infrastructure to reach out today, let alone the data usage that's required for many other blockchains. Not just reach them, but design it in a way that will enable people in poorer countries to also participate in and develop on the blockchain, and use this new innovation of infrastructure to pull themselves up and to participate in the global economy in a way that our current systems doesn't allow for, because it can be extremely difficult to even get like a normal bank account and all the things that we're taking for granted in the West, where blockchain will be able to deliver that relatively easily in these countries. Because as I mentioned earlier, with the really revolutionary thing that Bitcoin was the first one to deliver was, look, we can make a system where trust is taken out of the equation. And when you sit down and you really think about like what does that mean? What does it mean to take trust out of the equation? Like it means so much. You start to think about how much industry, how much money, how much time is being spent on verifying whether or not your statement is trustworthy, whether or not your transaction is trustworthy, whether or not your shipment is on time, the right items, etc. Like all of these things. The most disruptive thing that I can think of would be legal work. So not all, but I foresee that the majority of legal work is going to be one of the first things to be automized within the next decade, because ultimately the majority of legal work is you're just hiring an expert, some lawyer, counselor, solicitor, who's there to help tell you, am I drawing within the lines in this case, or is that guy drawing within the lines of what's permitted? And ultimately, well, as good as a lawyer you might have, they're never going to be as accurate as a script of Python is at telling you yes or no, this thing falls within or outside the definitions. It'll be difficult to translate many things directly into code. There are a lot of more sophisticated areas of the law, but there are many, many, many more very simple, clear-cut cases that could be automated through that. And then that begs the question of, well, if you're asking a program to tell me whether or not something is right or wrong, who is running the program? Who am I trusting that their integrity will ensure that the information coming out here is true, trustworthy, and everything's all right? And that's one of the ways that I see blockchain being able to drop like a bomb of disruptions that's gonna eat away at first and then ultimately probably decimate areas of industry that are well, that's existed for hundreds of and thousands of years almost. So that was a very long rant. You know me well enough. If you let me, I'm just going to keep talking.
Yeah, and that's cool. It's because that's why I brought you on, basically, right? So it's cool. But yeah, that was exactly the same thing that really hooked me. After, like, I was looking at that point, I was looking for investment opportunities, and since you had texted me back then, and I knew that that had gone up, I thought that it was interesting to look into crypto. And as soon as I kind of got the hang of what is it that this technology can do, I was like, wow, this is insane. Because the trust thing is just it's what has been missing from the internet, right? It's the barrier for us being completely consumed by the internet, basically. Is that trust has been missing. That why won't you upload all of your identifications, for example, to some online service and just use that? Or why don't we have a purely digital currency system or anything like that? It's because there hasn't been trust. You cannot completely trust that who you're talking to on the internet is who they say they are, or that you're going to get the product that you're buying or whatever. Like, there's so much shit going on the internet that just being able to completely eradicate the question of trust makes so many things possible that it's mind-boggling. And there's so many things being built at such a rapid pace right now that is such a whirlwind to be part of, right? And that's like that's part of what sucks you in. It's like it's a constant adrenaline rush because so much is happening all at once, all of the time in this space, because there's so many possibilities being created by this technology that I think it's really exciting times. And I've gone from viewing it as like gambling and scams to like, it's like every week the level of now how risky I think crypto investment goes down. It's like I'm starting to be like, this is not going away. This is a one-way street. This is only going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Like, who's going to win? We don't know. Like, there's always this battle for the smart contract market. Well, you would say Cardano would win, and they probably will. I really hope so. I'm going to make a lot of money if they do. And but it's just I don't think it's really this is not financial advice, but I'm starting to think that it's not as risky as it's made out to be. Because the technology is not going anywhere. Like, you can see the general direction of things. Then there's several thousand racehorses that you can bet on, and which one of those is the best, we can only guess, and no one knows. And you have to do some serious, real research to just have a chance of figuring it out. But the direction itself of blockchain, like a question of, is blockchain going to be huge in the future? There's no doubt, I think, that yes, it is. It definitely is going to be very, it's going to be the thing. It's going to be the new thing. It's just a layer on top of the internet that is just going to be the structure in the future. Yeah.
I think we're looking at the evolution of a change in much the same way as JavaScript was a evolutionary stage for the internet.
Yeah.
To any of the viewers who might be as old and ancient as us might remember how the websites were looking like in the late 90s and the early 2000s. They were just dead HTML blocks. Maybe it'll be like a pixelated GIF or something like that, but it was really all nothing more than like a MySpace level of layout of things. It wasn't until you got JavaScript, Web 2.0, that you started getting the living, breathing, dynamic websites that we have available today. And that greatly changed what kind of services, applications, user experiences we were able to cater on the internet. Blockchain is another level of evolution like that. I think is a much greater step than just JavaScript. But analogously, I would say that it's like the internet in the 90s as well, what you were talking about. If you're looking into the internet at that time, you wouldn't know, what is this thing going to become? How is this going to be used? But it was crystal clear that this thing is going to be huge. This is not going to be, this is not a little fad. This is not side mention thing. This thing is going to be a key component in everybody's life in the near future. We don't know exactly how, but it absolutely will be. Then, of course, we had the dot-com bubble when more people started realizing this. And I think we're seeing something similar today now as well. We have a lot of pets.com stuff in the crypto that's being invested in because people think it sounds good, but they don't really understand why it would be good at doing what it does, because blockchain solutions aren't good solutions for everything. Ultimately, blockchain is a worse performing database. So like that's what it is. So
that's a nice way to put it.
What you get for that, paying that price of saying, all right, I'm going to sacrifice some performance, some speed, some latency, some storage capacity, or like whatever the specs will dictate. What you're getting for the sacrifice in return tend to be things like security, resilience, zero trust system networks. For some things, you really want that's really valuable. For other things, maybe you don't really give a shit, like whether or not it's all like really centralized. Yeah. Centralization have benefits to it as well. But the notion that the base level of where we're settling our finances, that is decentralized, is very, very powerful. And yeah, I would agree that blockchain I believe is less risky than it's made out to be. It is definitely something that's risky to invest in. You should not invest in anything that you don't do your own research in, develop your opinion on why you think that this thing is valuable or will be valuable. But I must admit that I'm finding myself in the situation where, as risky as blockchain still is, when I'm looking at all of the alternatives, I don't see anything less risky. I see only more risky things. Like, exactly. If I want $1 million tomorrow, it's like, great. Should I put it in the house market that is higher than ever, and we know that the CDOs that brought the bubble crash in 2007 and 8 is still going on. They changed the labels on that. We can see real estate developers crashing in China already now. And should I put it in the real estate like that? No, maybe not. Should I put it in the S&P 500 then still, which is at an all-time high? The Fed, and then God knows who and what are open about the fact that they have been buying in stocks to stimulate the economy with trillions of dollars that they've been printing to keep the COVID hiccup from having an immediate impact. So they just kept drinking, letting the future hangover is going to be worse. So that doesn't seem like a great place to put the money either. Should I put it into my mattress and let it all disappear to inflation? Should I there isn't really any other option to me that appear like, oh, this thing is more secure than blockchain, even if I didn't care about potential gains, which is definitely alluring. Even if I only cared about, I want to retain my wealth for my family to make sure that we have what we need. I must admit, like, for right today, I would say just go Bitcoin. Like, Bitcoin is not the thing that's going to be growing the most thing, but it is rock hard solid as far as like resilience goes. And I don't see anything outside of blockchain that's any less risky. Quite the contrary, it's looking very ominous at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly the thing, that the more you read up on stuff, you start to, it's a constant, like, it's always a new what the fuck experience. Every time you read something new, it's constantly like, wait a minute. First of all, like this whole blockchain thing, wait a minute, is that real? Like, is that what's happening right now? And then you start reading up on the current monetary system and the Fed and all that they're doing, and you're like, wait a minute. And then you start looking up on Bitcoin and all of the other problems, and you find out why Bitcoin is as big as it is. Like, it's basically better than gold. It's basically the best property that we have ever seen in human history. You're like, wait a fucking minute. And then, like, it just keeps on going. And I totally agree with you. I'm so in doubt right now about what to do with my money other than keep putting it into crypto. because it just seems like everyone is trying to steal your money outside of crypto, right? And it's so unsafe and so pumped up, and it's so ready to burst at any moment, it seems like. But no one knows what's going to happen. So yeah, I feel that definitely. And that's increasingly why I'm starting to feel that this space is so interesting as an investor, but also I'm starting to feel like as an entrepreneur, like, if this is the new space, then let's explore what can be built here and what can we make. So yeah, I just think it's a really fascinating thing. But let's talk a little bit more about Cardano specifically, because now you kind of gave the overview of the vision of Cardano. Actually, I wanted to ask you, when you gave that whole introduction of the project, have you gone from mainly looking at Cardano as an investment till more being like involved with the actual vision of Cardano? Like, has there been a transition there from just looking at it like, this looks like a very safe and good investment, and like compared to the other cryptocurrencies, to like, hey, I really actually believe in this vision and I want to help this community do this thing that they're trying to do?
Not a shift, but there was a transition from just the investment aspect and into both.
Yeah.
I'm reminded of the one of the old quotes from Steve Jobs saying, like, there's a point in time where you may learn that you can poke the world, you can change it, and you may be completely surprised by the amount of impact that you can actually have if you just show up and you do your darn best to make that imprint of whatever you see that you think can have an improvement. And Cardano as a community, as a network, just makes it so goddamn easy to, if you want to help, if you have something between your ears and you want to show up and you want to make some impact, it's so very easy. The Project Catalyst governance bootstrap system that that is the precursor for their fully decentralized on-chain governance system. I mean, every few months you have like millions and millions of dollars that are being given away to people who have ideas that they want to build on the community, and it's all decided by the people that hold ADA, like the Cardano's native asset token. And it's receiving some support wheels from IOG, but largely I would say it's like the primus motor and all of this is the community, like creating coalitions of community advisors, reviewing all of the things, giving props and appraisals and giving long noses and harsh critique wherever it's deserved. So I'm working on one project, for instance, where like that's been funded that way around, because I saw something in the system where I was thinking, well, this is pretty shitty, and I think I know like how to make this better. So let me make that suggestion. Like, here's how I would do this thing, and here's how I think it could help. And if you give me a small amount of money, then I got a team that can help like put that in place. And yeah, people's like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Here you go. It's like, oh, okay. And like that was it.
Yeah.
And there's like way more to come. Like the treasury of Cardano that is being used for to fund these proposals is, don't quote me on the exact number, but I do believe that it's 200 or 300 million ADA that's in it. And I think I'm lowballing. It might be 400 or 500, but I want to rather want to underestimate. But even that, then current evaluation, that's still $500 billion available that's being doled out in funding every few months as it goes forward. Because like I said earlier, like Cardano is designed from first principles, and part of those first principles is that the key developers that like started the network off has never been intended to be the custodians and the owners of the network. This is not a privatized, this is decentralized. And that involves who is going to change the light bulbs, who's going to repair the plumbing, who's going to make sure that it continues to evolve and develop in the ways that are hard to predict exactly in the details. They're easy to predict in terms of inevitability. The laws of entropy will dictate that it is either in decay or it is in development. And so the fact that it's been designed from day one to function without having some sort of daddy, without having some sort of authority that you can always flee to when things get really difficult and say, here you go, I'm taking all my responsibilities and I'm just putting that in your hands so I don't have to worry about this. Now I'm giving you all of my autonomy. That's not how it's built, because that's not the vision of it. That's it's inspiring and invigorating, and so it's both,
and scary.
And scary as well. Yeah, I mean we're watching the grassroots of completely unprecedented democratized control of communities, networks, and vast sums of money. Most people say that they want true democracy, like where everybody has like equal say. And we're really going to be putting these things to the test now, because like that sounds really nice on the box of it all, but if you're in an airplane, do you really want every single passenger to have equal say about the engines on the airplane?
Exactly.
Or do you maybe want the engineers or the pilots to have more say in some areas? And then how do you decide who gets to have that power, authority, or title of the pilot or the engineer or the various bits and pieces? We are all going to have to figure that out, and we have to do that. IoT is helping, but IoT is helping building up the network in the same way that your parent might have had their hand on your shoulder when you're first learning how to ride a bike. But the goal here is very straightforward and very inevitable. They are going to let go.
Yeah.
This has always been about them letting go, and we need to figure out how to ride that bike. And there is a possibility that we're going to ram that straight into live traffic, and everything's going to be completely like decimated.
Yeah.
I actually think that the whole governance system of it is a way bigger threat for something like that than any technical aspect of it.
Yeah.
The probability of somebody cracking cryptography in the network, the possibility of like majority of governments cracking down, trying to make it illegal, all of these things, I think are way lower probability than just the fact, all right, all these imbeciles, myself included, we're at the wheel and we're just going to ram this thing straight into a wall somehow, make some stupid ass decisions that's going to kill off the network in whatever way that figurative picture will come to fruition. So that's also why I'm engaged with that level of the governance and development, is that, well, I really want this thing to succeed. And so for as much as I think my 2 Lovelaces are worth in any considerations, it's my responsibility to say like what I think is reasonable, what I think is not, and to shut the fuck up when grown-ups are talking in areas where I'm not an expert, where I don't have, I might have you almost always have some value to add to a conversation, but there can be a very vast gap between what your value is and somebody that might have had 20 years of relevant experience working in that field.
Yeah, and that's we'll have to see. It's definitely one of the things that I think are extremely fascinating, because I've always thought that I wanted a true democracy, and true sovereignty. That's another thing, like the whole crypto space and Bitcoin as well. This idea of that you have sovereignty over your own money. I think the idea is cool, but I do not have my money myself. They're stored with a centralized exchange because I'm too much of a wuss to take care of them myself. So it's like, if you want some of these things that like, oh, it's so awesome that we can have total control over our own property. Like we can take our money home. We don't need the bank or anything. But when it comes down to it, I would rather store it in an exchange for now, at least. I think it's also a technical issue that I don't feel like I completely have gotten the technicalities of the wallet and everything down, and how to store my passwords in a safe way and all that. I'm really new into this space. It's like 1.5 months or something like that. But and this democracy thing is another thing that I'm like, I really like the idea. I think it's so fascinating, and I'm so excited to see it play out. But it's also really fucking scary that it is a true democracy, and that the majority is actually going to decide what is going to be built and what is going to go on in the community. I feel like right now, when I've joined in on Twitter Spaces and talks, people seem very reasonable. And like you said, like, to be reasonable, you need to know when to shut up and when to talk, and what you can do and what you don't know anything about. And it seems like people got that down. Most people right now in the community, it seems like they're very reasonable. They're listening to each other. They're kind, and so on. What's going to be really interesting to see is when you onboard Every fucking single person in the world to that system.
That's the thing, right? Because the people that are in now, we're still very early on if you're just looking at the stats of it all, both in terms of like crypto may be worth more than ever, but in terms of market cap, if you're comparing that with the economies in like in the rest of the world, crypto is still just a rounding error on the budget sheets of the world economy. So like if you really do believe that it's going to have an impactful role to play in the world economy, then you must concede that whatever the evaluation is of your favorite shitcoin today, it's still a tiny bit of what it will grow into. Regarding, so I definitely have to hit me up. I will help you understand wallets and help you with how to keep that in a safe and secure way that is also not, should we say, very, very high risk. Because one of the first things that I thought to myself when I set up my first wallets was, okay, shit, if I lose this seed phrase, that's it.
Yep.
You know, no more. And so I have been thinking about how to do that in the best solution. 1 second.
Yeah, sure.
All right, so I'll go through this in detail with you, but for the audience, first of all, very important to pull this off the exchanges for several reasons. I would say most poignantly and probably easy to understand is there are bad people with poor moral standards that are looking to steal your crypto forever and ever. You might feel like it is more secure to keep them in an exchange. I would agree with you right up until I start thinking about it, because what is the place where there is the most crypto to be stolen? Well, that would be the exchange. That is where there is the absolute most. So this is the place that hackers are the most incentivized to be breaking into. And this has happened multiple times throughout crypto already, most infamously with Mt. Gox, but also other exchanges. They have been hacked, the crypto is sent out, and that's it, done. Everything's gone. Secondly, other than that, exchanges are centralized entities, which means that governments can come in and put their thumb on them. You want all your crypto to be confiscated overnight because the government finally have to bow down to the fear that they see in what crypto can do for them. Well, boom, there you go. Now your crypto is confiscated. Or in terms of with ADA, for instance, because your ADA has an impact in the governance system, you're using it as power weight to vote with. If you're keeping your ADA on a centralized exchange, you are in fact giving that exchange your political weight in the governance system. And so now nothing's stopping the exchange to participate in the ADA governance and vote with your ADA, because you don't own anything that's on the exchange. You own an IOU from the exchange saying that we have 100 ADA in your name and we're going to give you this 100 ADA, but as long as it's in there, they own that ADA.
Yeah, it's just like with the bank.
Yeah, the famous adage, not your keys, not your crypto, or not your coin, is very important to take to heart. So definitely encourage anybody and everyone to learn about wallet software. Just do a few Googling. You'll find a plethora of great high reviewed wallets. Take them off the exchanges. Even if you're looking to sell them in the short term, sending them back to the exchanges is depending on the blockchain, but in most cases, it's going to take seconds, if not just one or 2 minutes, something like that. Then it'll be on the exchange. Then you can sell it all. And And as far as the seed phrase goes, some quick tips for how to do that in the safe regards as well. Cardano's seed phrases are ultra secure. They have 24 words, which makes them resistant to even quantum computer decrypting. That's a whole other rabbit hole, but so you have like those 24 words or 12 words or however many your wallet using. So you write all of those down. Always do it offline. You don't take a picture. You don't write it in your notebook on your phone or anything like that, because a hacker that's looking for this know exactly what they're looking for. So bad idea to be keeping anything digital. You write down those words and then you encrypt them somehow. Shuffle them around. As the more, the better. But it might be something as simple as you're going to take the first word and the fifth word and swap those two things around. Everything else isn't like in order. If you're doing that, in the case where like 24 words, I think I did some back of the envelope math saying that if somebody wants to crack that, even if they can process 1 million combinations a second, it will still take them 20 million years if they don't guess it until the last combination.
Yeah.
To guess all of the order. They can see all the 24 words, but they don't know which order that they're all in. You're thinking, well, it's not that many, right? But when you start multiplying 24 to 23 to 22 all the way up, that adds up to a number that I don't know what that number is called, but it's really fucking huge. So just that simple little thing, you could almost have that list just lying around, and then people would be unlikely to be able to break it. You shouldn't let it lie around, of course. Then what you do on top of that is that you take your list of the words that is now decrypted, and then you break that into 2 or 3 or 4 different pieces. And then you put one in your bank vault, you put one in your safe, you bury one in your parents' garden, or you give one to your friend or whatever. And you can make duplicates of these as well, because you've encrypted the list, and you broken it into pieces. And so now you can just scatter it like Voldemort's Horcruxes all over the place. And so if you were to miss one of them, you have a house fire and your fireproof safe boils the note that you had in there, or like whatever, it's fine. You have a backup stored with your favorite bartender, or like whatever. Because like at that point in time, the security risk of having 1 or even 2 of those pieces exposed is nothing. It's almost nothing. And there are many other great advices on like how you can handle these things like very securely. But personally, I found like this is a pretty simple, pretty low effort to very high return on security and also redundancy, like resilience. Like I don't have to worry about like, oh God, what happens if I still lose this thing? Well, I have duplicates, I have backups. They're spread around to all my favorite dairy milk farmers and like whoever else I want to store a shop with.
Yeah, but
definitely take control of your own crypto.
I will look into it, but I think it's really interesting, just on a philosophical level, how it confronts you with how we have been so used to not having responsibility for our own property, really, and how just the thought that it's actually scary for you to take that control over what is yours and actually keep it safe yourself, and you having the responsibility for it. That's really interesting. I think that we've been so so used to it being that way, and other people having that responsibility for us is it says a lot about how society has been for a long time. And
it does. I'm reminded. I'm full of quotes today, so I'm reminded of all the B. Franklin saying. I think it was Ben Franklin saying, "The man who sacrifices his liberty in turn for security deserves neither.
Mhm.
And I think that's very poignant today, because as you're touching on, it is a paradigm shift for almost everybody that isn't some freak or living alone in the woods, to really take responsibility of your own burdens. And I'm, on my more pessimistic days, I would say that I'm observing that people say they want democracy, they say they want involvement, they say they want freedom, they say they want responsibilities and authority, but they don't act it. They talk a lot of shit, but but their action says very differently. Their action shows that they would rather relinquish themselves of their powers to some strongman figure that can take care of this for them, because they don't want to be burdened with the risk of the decisions, or they don't want to be burdened with the work that the responsibilities entails. Like in a the democratic area, for instance, it's work. It's a burden, because well, you can't just go in and just vote on anything completely blindly. You need to be actually engaged in and understand the topic of whatever you're deciding on. Mm-hmm. So are you really willing to bear that burden, or would you rather just give that off to someone else, and not have to do any of that work anymore, and then keep yourself willfully blind and impotent to the impact that actually makes the differences? And I hope that it's going to take a spark, I think, in fear, but I hope that there's going to be some sort of wake-up call for the silent majority here, that makes them see the necessity in taking responsibility yourself, do the work, put it on your back, because the alternative is always worse. Not in the now. It's kind of like lying. Like in the moment, it's very convenient to tell that lie, but in the long term, you always pay, and it's always with interest. The problem never gets smaller. And it's the same thing as far as my broad brush of generalizations and straw manning here goes. It's the same in terms of like liberty and responsibilities. It's you can't ultimately run away from your responsibility. It's going to come bite you in your ass if you just shelve it up to someone else, hoping that they can take care of it, thinking that they have your best interest in mind. You're going to be sorely mistaken. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but inevitably.
Yeah.
So get your money off the exchange.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, there's a lot of realizations, I think, when you go into this, and I kind of feel like same as when we started our first company. It was kind of the same feeling of I've always wanted to do this, and now I'm here and have a huge responsibility to partners and employees, people who depend on me to make good decisions and keep this company afloat, so everyone can get their salary and have some food to eat. And also at that point, I had taken a pretty big loan to invest in a company as well. So there's a lot of risk at that point. So it didn't feel as awesome as I thought it would in the beginning. It was more like, wow, that's a lot of pressure. But I got used to it, and now I wouldn't have it any other way. So I think it's the same process I need to go through with this, and I hope that we'll figure it out as a society. You know, there will be services. There already are, like banks, crypto banks, and stuff like that for people who don't want the responsibility. But I think it's a great opportunity for the people who takes the opportunity and gets involved and takes control over their own money. I think there's a lot to gain from that.
Well, I'm banking on it for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
A word of advice to your audience that I wish I'd been told or that I'd realized earlier on myself. So to anybody of you who may be starting in crypto, or maybe you're at the point where you're thinking about, like, you've been thinking about this for years. Every time you heard about it coming up, but you haven't really done anything in it. What you really need to think through here is, if this doesn't pan out, if Nils and I are completely wrong, you stand to lose whatever money you're putting inside of it. Worst case scenario, you put in $10,000, you lose all $10,000, all that's gone. That's the worst case scenario. Best case scenario, you have, virtually speaking, infinite upside. That you really need to think about that. So what you need to take away from that is not that you need to go act on this right now. The point to take away from that is you need to educate yourself on this, because on the off chance that this thing does work out, that this is the future, you want to find out yesterday. You want to find out as soon as possible, because if it does work out in any remote area of that direction, the upside is, as investors would call it, is extremely asynchronous. So there is probably nothing, absolutely nothing else you could be spending your time on that is more important than educating yourself on this. There's probably nothing else that has a bigger potential impact on your life, your family's possibilities, than educating yourself on this right now. Because if it is going in that direction, then it is completely, utterly life-changing still. Even though you might think, oh, I'm late to the party. Again, zoom out, look at all the numbers, world economies, compare everything in total. Bitcoin's total market cap now is $1.2 trillion, give or take, like depending on what time it is right now at the day. But
which is not that much.
No, it's not that much. It's like a sixth of what the US printed on top of what they already print in the span of like 6 months in 2020. It's nothing. It's like a fart in the wind. So on a global economic scale. So yeah, if you've been thinking about crypto, as I know I had for many years before I pulled myself together and acted on that, stopped being lazy. What I wish somebody would have shaken me and made me face and realize is that if it goes in that direction, there's nothing else you're doing that's more important. Whatever project you're working on, whatever side hustle thing is, like, etc. Why are you doing that thing? What are you hoping to get from that? All right, compare that to the potential upside of this other thing. Yeah. And then rearrange your priorities. Yeah,
that is what you're realizing more and more as you go into it. And that's why I think a lot of, like myself included and you as well, the more you start going into it, the more you start moving like more and more of your time and energy and money over into this space, because the risk reward scenario is just so insane. You know, I think it's like, if the thesis is right, that, which I think it is, but people need to research it for themselves, that something like just Bitcoin, for example, not to make it too complicated, is going to hit a market cap that is comparable to other asset classes, like stocks and bonds and stuff like that, right? That means, and people say like within the next 5 to 10 years, that might happen. What that means is, if you take something like 100,000 Danish kroners, which is like $20,000 or something, put it in now, then in 5 to 10 years, you can retire. That is the reality of the upside, if that thesis is true. And the downside, like you said, is you're going to lose those $20,000.
Yeah.
And that's fucking insane.
Yeah, because $20 is a lot of money to most
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
But in the scope of but at the same time, it's not that much money, in the sense that it is a lot of money, but that's an amount of money that you can still save and you can earn back, and you can get to that number within a matter of some years,
Exactly.
depending on your job, your stations, and opportunity. Let's just say half a decade or something like that. And as you put it, like, if it does go in that direction, then that might be all you ever needed to do to get set for the rest of your life. And that's not even looking into things like DeFi, where you'll be able to like lend out your Bitcoin completely securely, and then you also earn interest on this thing that keeps growing in value. So
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. So that's what I think is so insane, that even if you just simplify it so much and just take Bitcoin, just look at that and the trajectory that that many people think is going to have. That is the scenario, and because $20,000, it is a lot of money, but it's doable for most people, and that's the insane opportunity that we have right now in this space. And it's just, I was just talking to my fiance just before we went on about it, and as I explained to her, one of the things that made me even more hooked when I started reading on it was this fact that a lot of the traditional investors or institutional investors, banks and pension funds and all of these, they, as far as I understand, they are just waiting for regulation to get in place. They actually want to get into the space, but they can't because regulation needs to get in place first. And so you have this situation where the private investors have the opportunity to front run everyone else that usually sits on everything, all of their assets. So it's just like, even looking away from the technology and all the possibilities of the technology, just that case of the average Joe man being able to take his 20,000 hard-earned dollars and put it into this and fucking retire in 10 years because all of the bankers and everyone else are stuck behind regulation. They want to get into this space, but they can't. Yet it's such an insane situation we have right now.
Absolutely. And a thing that I realized not that long ago is the beauty of it all is that the private bank, national banks and treasuries, completely different solution. They very much do not like crypto and not doing everything that they can to keep that at bay. But the private banks, even though the people working in the private banks, at least after a certain level of seniority, are not stupid. They know that crypto is here to eat their lunch money and they're going to kill them all. Even though that's the case, the way that the companies are structured, the way their incentive models are built, they are still going to want to buy into this.
Yeah.
Because the way that financial markets works, ever since the gold standard got removed and you weren't allowed to make company contracts that had gold as a secondary form of payment if the currency were different, then the scope of anything businesses does have been turned shorter and shorter and shorter, all the way down to the way it is now, which is like it's on a financial quarterly basis. Even if the company knows that something may be better in the long term, they tend to do whatever is good for the next financial quarter. And so privatized banks, I believe, are going to jump in with both legs as soon as regulations allows them to, even though they know that long term it will kill off the banks. But ultimately, the people running the bank, involved the banks, the people getting bonuses get so on the performance of the things that they're buying into and investing in. And they can see that, well, the bonus I can get for the next quarter is going to be insane if I'm in Bitcoin, even if I know that the bank's probably not going to be around in 2 years from now. What do I care?
Yeah.
So that I really think that the banks are going to willingly kill themselves for money when they're allowed into crypto.
That is beautiful in some way.
Absolutely, very proud.
Drowning in their own greed. Yeah.
Do you think that's a good place to end up? I'm very mindful of your time.
Oh yeah, I see the time. Yeah. You're like, oh man, we could talk about this for hours. But I think we should just say that this is probably not the last time that you have been on the podcast, and we can continue the conversation another day. But I think this was a great introduction for people who are looking to look into this space. So we can get more into detail next time around. But it was nice having you.
Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'll see you next time.
Ciao.